Good evening. Welcome to The Big Fight. We live in a society. What does that mean? It basically means that we are agreeing to be governed by a certain set of rules, of norms, and above all, of laws. And that's really been the pattern of human history. From anarchy to a society means you agree to be governed by certain rules, certain laws that should, ideally, especially in a democracy, apply to everyone. Now, we have been seeing over the years, and perhaps a disturbing spate just in the last couple of weeks, a number of cases where people don't completely seem to agree with that, where they feel they are entitled to take the law into their own hands, or that they are above whatever norms and laws are governing the rest of us. That's the VIP culture in the second part that I'm talking about, and vigilantism, the first part. Let's just take a look at some of these images, and you will recognize Mr. Gaikwad up there, Shiv Sena MP. Flying, loses his temper with the cabin staff, decides to take off his sandal, beats up an Air India staffer, and then boasts about it repeatedly, says, yeah, maine usko 25 baar, mara tha, chappal se mara tha. And then after that, then protests, then says, these rules, these norms don't govern me. I am an MP, I am entitled to fly. Look at the second image we have out there. Those are cow rakshaks. Now, you may disagree with the principle of cow slaughter. You may say that cow slaughter is against the law in many states, and it is. But can a group of people take the law into their own hands? Can they stop somebody who's transporting a cow, legally or illegally? You have to still verify that. Can they drag that person out and beat that person to death? Look at the other images. You've got anti-Romeo squads where people feel empowered. Anti-Romeo squads can be done officially, as is being done by Uttar Pradesh, by the government, where they are stopping harassment. That's fine. But if either a policeman or individual people decide to say this person should not be having a romance with that other person, they're going to take that person up and beat that person to death. It just happened in Jharkhand. In that particular case, a young man was beaten to death because people were objecting to his relationship with a girl from another community. Can the law be taken into your own hands? And is the law the same for everybody? That's what we're going to see. Because the minute you start going away from these principles, frankly, you're no longer a society. You are heading towards the Wild West. And is that the way we are headed? Well, joining us, a great panel representing the Congress Party. We have Pawan Khera with us. J.V.L. Narasimha Rao is there from the Bharatiya Janata Party. Shahzad Poonawala is here in his capacity as somebody who's just filed a petition at the Supreme Court against Gau Raksha and against the vigilantism that has been seen. Notices have now been issued by the Supreme Court on that particular issue. Professor Rakesh Sinha represents the RSS way of thinking, the Pracharak. It's great to have you with us. Vrinda Grover, senior advocate, is going to help us understand all of this. And also great pleasure to have joining us from Mumbai, Jitendra Bhargav, former director Air India, who's in particular going to talk about one of those incidents I was referring to. And we also have Asaduddin Owaisi, Lok Sabha MP from Hyderabad, who's going to be talking about some of the waves of vigilante justice or injustice that we have been seeing, and whom it's actually aimed at. So, as a society, are we governed by a certain set of norms and a certain set of laws, and should they apply to everyone? And does anyone at all, no matter who that person is, have the right to take the law into their own hands?
Not at all. The way we are going to work as a country has been decided and determined in 1950 when the Constitution was adopted. The preamble of the Constitution says very clearly, we the people of India, and then lays down the principles of equality, non-discrimination, secularism, by which we will be governed, by which we will live, and all the laws that will apply to us. So there is no room for anybody to think that if I disagree, I will therefore take the law into my own hands and I will decide a way of life. That is prohibited constitutionally as well as under the law.
No, I think democracy is different from monarchy and other forms of government, because here there is no privileged class. It is supposed to be there should be no privileged class. But unfortunately in India, we have abolished jamindari, but we have re-established political jamindari. I disagree with those parliamentarians who enjoy privileges and who enjoy privileges, extra constitutional privileges, and they try to impose their status on common people. So and I am deadly against the VIP culture, and I can go to the extent, Bikram, I can go to the extent appealing to the ministers, cabinet minister, to have smaller houses, not big, huge buildings.
No, that's
these
good
are
in theory, but
these are the Vikram. These are the things.
If somebody is an MP, does that person have the right to take off a sandal and a slipper and beat up somebody else without being punished?
Nobody has right. Even the Prime Minister and President of India has no right.
If an airline says that somebody who's behaving in this manner, I don't want to fly that person again, does the airline have the right to block that person?
Vikram, I was the first person to tweet and condemn his action.
The common thread between both the issues that we're going to discuss today, whether it's the Gaikwad Giri or whether it's the Gai Giri, both the issues, and the other Giris, the common thread is that when you think that rule of law can be trifled with because you belong to a certain dispensation, whether you're an MP or whether you belong to a certain ideological grouping, the Gaurakshaks take rule of law into their own hands and kill people because they think they have the right to do so. The MP takes out his slipper and beats people, and his party has been doing it for 30 years with the BJP, happily allying with them in government everywhere. So he thinks he has the right to do it. This is an issue of rule of law, and we have to establish in the course of this debate and in the course of New India that rule of law means that everybody is subject to it, including the MP and the Prime Minister.
I'm starting to get the principles laid out, because I can assure you when you come down to specifics, there will be debate. People say, but you know, in this case is different, in that case is different. Trivial?
No, Vikram, nobody in holding whatever position it may be has a right to take law into their hands. Nobody can indulge in a criminal action. This, I think, beating someone with slipper is an act of criminality, and no privilege to any minister or any head of government or to a member of parliament. No one has the privilege to indulge in such acts of criminality, and it has to be treated as a criminal action.
So it cannot happen without protection from somewhere, without patronization from somewhere. It cannot happen. It happens because whether it's Gaikwad or Gai Rakshak, there is somebody or some group or some lobby which is protecting you. You get away with anything because you're very confident that you can get away, like it happened in Gaikwad's case. He has gotten away. He will now fly tomorrow. So he's got away because all of them protected him, irrespective of which party they were from. They stood by him. Why should they stand by him?
Can I just add one line? Why are these principles indispensable in a country like India? Because there is caste hierarchies, there is economic disparity, there is religious pluralism, there is a lot of gender disparity. Without these principles of equality and non-discrimination, this country cannot be held together.
No, I think
as a community, as a society.
It's required. The principle is something that we're all agreeing on.
The constitutional principles are indispensable. Because earlier the hierarchies were codified by caste system.
While having said this, all these things, you know, democracy is passing through a transitional phase. Because we have
to what?
Transitional phase, because you know.
I actually am a bit concerned to hear you saying that, because there are certain principles of democracy that we've accepted for a long period of time: equality, rule of the law. Even saying we are now transitioning, I'd really love to know what you think we're transitioning
without
to.
actually making sure they are deeply embedded in our midst.
And whatever we are transitioning to, in your view, is it something that all of us as citizens know we are transitioning to?
Let me complete this, why I am saying that democracy is from transition. Due to communication revolution in this country, all over the world and part of India, the Indian youth, common people are not awakened. They are not silent spectators. They are participating in democratic process. That is one.
Common people had a very strong view on Gaikwad.
That is one of the reasons that elitism in democracy is at stake. That's why.
But the principles don't change.
No, in the past there have been several events.
What Gaikwad did was not elitism, by the way.
Pawan, I can quote a Congress minister on a plane molesting a air hostess, and there was no ban. This time, because there is a public pressure. There is a public pressure. That's why I am saying
the ban was good, but it lasted. It didn't. Yeah, you're right. It has happened. Mr. Ravindra, Gaikwad has gone to Parliament and has said very specifically, it is a violation of my rights. I have a legal right, a constitutional right to fly, and the airlines are depriving me of that. So I'm going to ask Brinda about that. Brinda, before I go to him, does he have such a right?
No, he
I missed it somewhere in my civics lessons. I think Umar Abdullah.
He has a right.
Umar Abdullah tweeted that this. I missed this somewhere in my civics lessons.
You have a right to freedom of movement from one part of the country to the other, but the mode of transport is not going to be that I have a right to fly. Please take the train, take a bus, take a private car. There are multiple ways of transport.
If an airline does not want to fly him, they have the right to say no?
Absolutely, there are rules. Because he clearly has proved himself to not be a person who's fit to travel. He's unfit to travel in an airline. He's a hazard.
And can you just imagine what the Air India staff is going to be feeling like? Can you imagine them? They're going to have to get him inside. They're going to have to say, sir, please take a seat, sit down there,
which brings
serve
us to
him,
the point
fawn
that our
over him.
citizens being heard.
Under pressure.
Or certain citizens are being heard.
But the consolation is that the Maharashtra government is saved.
You see, eventually he was
good by the
forced to
last
tender.
No,
He was forced
to the
no,
Air
no.
India, I'm sorry.
Eventually he
No,
was
he did
forced.
not.
See,
He
there
did not
is-
tender any
let's
apology to
understand.
Air India.
He was
Regrets.
forced to
No,
eventually
no.
offer a letter of regret, apologize for his behavior. He has given a letter of
Would a
regret.
citizen did
No, no,
this?
he's
Would he
given
get
a
away with
letter.
a letter of
Somebody would
regret?
have wanted an
Would a
incident to
citizen
flare
get
up.
away with it?
Vikram, when it comes to parliament, cutting across, I can name parliamentarians from across different parties. You have you have Congress MPs standing
This
up
doesn't
for him in
Whoever it
parliament.
is.
There you see, when it comes to these
talk about your
issues,
party's
all
line.
the parliamentarians get together.
They get
It's
together.
a bad
they're getting
it's a
together,
it's
it
a
is
bad
shocking.
precedent.
It's getting together at shocking. Okay, let me
They
just
have,
pick.
I can name them.
Give me one
Rajni Patil spoke about it, and then another
that's shocking.
congressman, Hussain Dalwai. Then
If
you have
parliamentarians
Naresh
have got
Agarwal from
together,
Samajwadi
hang
Party.
on.
Vikram,
They
If
all
parliament,
pressurized
shut
the
up
government.
one sec. I think I'm asking a basic question. And if you're saying that the whole of parliament believes this, I'm asking the question of the whole of parliament. Let me give you an example. Take the gentleman sitting behind me. I don't know why I'm picking on him at random, but take the gentleman sitting behind me. Supposing he was to get onto a plane tomorrow, and he was to decide to go and slap the cabin crew. What would happen to him? Does he have the right to get off the plane and walk away? Does he have the right to go and attend parliament? Does he have the right to keep on going around his business? Can he throw a tantrum and saying, if you don't allow me to fly, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I won't allow parliament to function. Is he allowed that? No. You know what happens to him? He goes to jail there and then. That happens to me. It happens to most people. Why should
but
parliamentarians be above
generally,
this?
this wouldn't have become a national issue. Let me also say this. If it was a commoner, he would not have been allowed on that airline.
He's traveling
But
on
If it was a
public money,
commoner,
by
he'd
the
have
way.
gone to prison
No,
that day and
but
then he'd been arrested
but
and dragged off.
let's understand, as I said in the beginning of my comments,
He's
for
also traveling on public
parliamentarians,
money.
you ought to have...
We pay for his ticket.
By the way, he's right. We're paying for his tickets.
We pay for
I
his
know
ticket,
that,
we get
I
beaten
think
by them.
MPs
Wow.
are... No, MPs have a public duty. We have elected them. Let's not say that they are
Can
not
I just get
entitled to
Jitendra
even
Bhargava,
tickets.
who's patiently sitting and listening to this entire discussion about an airline that he actually was so instrumental in handling for such a long time. Jitendra Bhargava, your sense of his actions, the fact that Air India, to everyone's, everyone was taking the hats off to Air India for standing its ground on this for so long. And then, of course, the subsequent denouement. Of course, there are further twists and tails, but how do you react to all of this?
You see, it's very unfortunate that the politicians have been allowed to vitiate the environment. There was public outrage. We had conclusive evidence of the Member of Parliament, Ravindra Gaikwad, being abusive, and claiming on television that he beat the Air India staffer 25 times with chappals. What else did we need? And yesterday, my bigger question would be that in Parliament, he was given an opportunity to speak, and he spoke lies, lies, and lies. I do not know whether there is any lie, any kind of rule that allows the Speaker or the members of Parliament who were all there to question a member of Parliament what kind of lies are being spoken. I would have preferred if before giving this opportunity yesterday to him to speak to in Parliament, and Sanjay Raut's press conference in which he made various kind of accusations, cast aspersion on the CMD's reputation, etc., that this ban, if it had to be revoked, ought to have been done 48 hours earlier. To have done it under this is going to demoralize Air India employees, let down the countrymen who would continue to believe that politicians can have their way with whatever kind of acts of misdemeanors they may indulge in, and they can get scot-free, because ultimately political compulsions matter to everybody. Now, question is, if Air India had that kind of tacit support of the Ministry of Civil Aviation, and Mr. Ashok Gajapati Raju says it in Parliament, the safety element will not be compromised. Now, what happens 24 hours? Are we compromising safety? The tragedy is we are not. It is plain political opportunism. The way all political parties rallied behind Shiv Sena Member of Parliament, did not utter a word against him, barring condemning the incident, did not seek action. And the government of India have, okay, there's 2 FIRs being filed. Now, what did the Member of Parliament say in Parliament? That Air India has alleged that invoked section 308 for attempt to murder because he was beating with chappals. Now that was not the clause, it was a lie being spoken. He was being accused of murder because he was pushing the Air India employee out of the door, which could have resulted in death. Now if these kind of lies are allowed to be perpetuated, now these kind of things are not challenged, so what do we do? Now it's a good decision if Ravindra Gaikwad on his own volition takes a decision of not traveling by Air India in spite of the ban having
I wouldn't hold my breath on that.
I think perhaps the only thing which Air India can do to hit back is if there are any crying babies on the plane, seat him next to them.
But you know, you're being
There's somebody who's looking at him about to spill some water, seat him next to him.
You're missing one important point. You're missing one important point.
Mr. Bhargav, I'm just coming back to you. Mr. Bhargav, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. And yes, these are disturbing times as we are going forward.